Hi everyone, back again with this sheep and lamb painting. Now I've left it a few days because there's quite a few things I want to do to this, and I've just been pondering what the best approach is. The first thing is I want to increase the sense of light and brighten up the colours around these two main animals. So I'm going to start with some watercolour. I've got some, I don't know if you can see that, some Viridian there. I've got some, I think this is pronounced Perylene green. I think that's correct. I've also got some Hooker's green as well, all ready to go on my little watercolour palette here. So if you've seen the recent streams, you'll know that I did the background in watercolour, but the animals have been painted in interactive acrylic. So I'm going back to the watercolour for the moment. Let's grab, I think this one's the Hooker's green. Yeah, that's probably close to what I want. Although I've mixed up a bit too strong there. We'll see what that looks like on the paper. Oh, that's okay, I think. So I want to, keep these animals distant. These are under a cloud or under the shadow of a cloud. This one's going to be resolved less, as mentioned a few times now in various episodes. But I want these two in the foreground to really be the centre piece of the show. So I want them with brighter colours and to be surrounded by grass which looks a little more lush than what I've got going on at the moment. And one of the things I may do, if this doesn't quite work out as planned, is come in on top of this with some acrylic, and in particular the fluorescent acrylics. They seem to produce really good colours which match very closely the colours of nature. So I definitely like that already. I think that's brightened things up quite a lot. Let's put some more in back here. Now for the stuff underneath the animal, and just here as well, I want to soften that edge. I'm just keeping it very dilute because I want the colour, but I want to keep it pale to enhance the kind of dark shadows. But I'm going to come back and address this lamb at some point as well, because that's looking a bit too sinister and dark for what I want. So let's get a bit more in here, and perhaps just break up some of that line work I've put in a little bit. But already I think that's making things look quite a lot more lush, which was the hope. So that's a good first step. Let's continue. I just need to wash this brush out. So my next move is I want to subdue some of these watercolour marker lines. In particular, the way things have worked out, it almost looks like there's a continuous line which follows around the back of the sheep and then joins on with the horizon line. So I want to kind of just lose that effect. Back to my interactive acrylics, frayed flat brush, little bit of tinting white and burnt umber. So just a very pale tertiary colour, and let's just put a little bit of that back here. It's not too bad, but I'm going to add a bit more white to the mix. And then I'll leave a bit, this bit's kind of blended in with the watercolour wash, so that's okay. Put a bit over there and just soften that a little bit. And I can come in later and do a more precise job if I need to, but for now, I just want to hide that a bit more. Let's put the paint on a bit more thickly with the ends of the bristles. So that started to work because by putting one colour here where the blue line's showing through quite a lot, not touching it there, and then putting the thicker paint on here with a different colour, it's just started to break up that line, which was the whole point. So let's add a bit of this same colour to the top of this sheet to lose that background, because I'll come over the top of that with a highlight colour at some point as well. I'm going to leave a little bit of the blue line there and then come in and put a little bit of thicker paint on top there. Let's get a bit of pure white, because when it dries some of that blue will show through anyway, and I want to lose that bit there as well, I think. So that's helped quite a bit. I think it's, it's still evidence of the line there, which I don't personally mind, but it's started to remove some of that I've cut this shape out kind of look that I had going on there inadvertently. Now let's do something similar for, keep going with this same colour, to hide a little more of the line work on these background characters. Because I can always come back in, be a bit more precise later. Okay, that started to soften those up a bit as well, so that's worked out okay. So the next thing I want to do is go back to the foreground animals and introduce some brighter colours to the fleece of this one. And then at the moment this is very much just a kind of dark and dreary silhouette, this lamb. And I want to introduce a little bit of, subdued colour, some subdued colours in there as well. So let's start with the fleece of the adult. So I'm going to grab some of my cad yellow, and just a little corner of that cad red, touch more, maybe just a little bit more. So we've got kind of yellowy orange. We'll see what that looks like when we put it down on the fleece. Now I'm going over that rather deep shadow I've got there because that didn't come out quite the colour I wanted. So by putting down the thin layer of paint, it will hopefully get a little bit more towards the colour that I want. But I quite like the way this is looking on the front of the animal. It's bringing a sort of much more of a sense of warmth to the light than what I had before. I'm going to add just a little more of the red. I've got to go a little bit careful with this because let's see what that looks like. Oh, that hasn't made as much difference as I thought it would, but it's okay though, it's okay on the whole, so we'll keep going. Yeah, quite happy with that so far. Just going to give my brush a quick clean. And now I want to go, I could do with some cerulean blue really, but I've only got ultramarine here on the palette, but we'll see if we can make it work. So ultramarine blue and a bit of the white, and then we'll grab a touch of that red again. Yeah, that's not too bad. So by keeping the paint thin, my hope is, and it seems to be working out okay, you know, some of the work that I've put down already is going to show through once this paint is dried, and that I think is a really nice way to work when you're trying to depict wool and things, because it's such a tangled mess, or even if it's not tangled, there's so much going on there that there's no way, at least not with the way I paint, no way to paint every little bit of the fleece. So by taking a layered approach, I think it's a good way to summarize what's going on, and it kind of conveys the sense that you've got all these tangles and things without having to depict all of them. So that's worked out okay. So I'm going to add a bit more white to that colour. And I'm going to use that round here. Make the tail a bit fluffier than it was. What little bit is showing of that. Just feather some of that colour across the body. So we can take a couple of approaches when painting a fleece. So in a previous stream, I put down some kind of almost impasto brush strokes of pure white. So they give me some textured highlights. And then by next to those, feathering the tips of the brush with some soft shadow colours, or pale shadow colours. That's a nice way to create texture as well. So let's put some of that highlight colour around here. Now in my reference, this area of the fleece is really quite light, but for the moment I'm going to, because I want to change the shape of what I've got there, I'm going to come round and fill that region in a bit more with this same colour. And then I'll add highlights to that later on. Use that to soften some of those dark shadow marks that I put in the other day. And that's not too bad. Okay, so now we'll stick with that colour, but we'll add a touch of yellow to it to bring it towards a green. Perhaps a little bit more. So I've got kind of a bluish green there. And yeah, that's not too bad. So put that there. So some of the light's being reflected off the grass onto the fleece here. And yeah, I'm fairly happy with that at the moment, so that's okay. Next thing then is just going to clean this brush. Actually, do I want to do that? Let's not do that just yet. Let's. I did clean it, but we'll pick up a little bit of that paint. And what I'm going to do is start to lift the tone of this little lamb a little bit. So I put some of that same colour in there. Okay. And while we're there, I have just cleaned the brush. I'm just going to pick up a little bit of the white I've got left. Pick up some of that pale green that I just used, and I'm going to put a little bit of that on the cheek, perhaps a bit there over the top of the eye. Okay, so that started to bring that a bit more to life, I feel. So let's now move our way back over to the lamb. So I need to grab just a touch more of the white. Just give me a second. And got my white now, so we'll mix up some of the white over here. We'll grab a touch of the burnt umber, a bit more, and that'll do for the moment. So let's I'm way too light, so we'll grab some more of the burnt umber. So I need my colours on this lamb in shadow to be lighter than they were, but not too far off in tone, and certainly much darker than the sheep on the left. That's a bit more like it. So, and in fact, that little highlight colour I put on the right side there is perhaps a little too bright, but we'll leave it as it is for the moment. But let's obscure most of it, change most of that deep blue shadow to more of a brown, but keep this left side where the animal is up against the adult as it is. And then I'm just going to change the shape of the head there a touch with that same colour, and maybe the shape of the ear as well. That kind of got lost. That's a little more like it, I think. I probably need to let it dry to be sure. But in doing what I just did, I kind of lost the where the legs join the body a little bit. So just clean the brush off again. And what we'll do is come back in with the burnt umber, a bit of the ultramarine blue, and just extend the legs up here a little more. Give a frayed edge to the silhouette on the left. And then there's a rear leg coming down there as well. Let's put a frayed edge over here. Now it's going to be difficult to tell how well that's working tonally until it's fully dry, but it's better than it was, certainly, I feel. And I will add some subdued reflected colours on this right hand edge at some point as well. All right, so now I think we will switch back to the watercolour for a moment. So I'm just washing this brush out thoroughly because I'm going to use it again with the watercolour. And what we'll do is grab some more. I think I'm more or less out of the hooker's green, so let's try one of these other greens. That one's pretty dark, so that's not really what I want, but let's see if we can use it somewhere as we've got it on the brush. So this shadow, this wasn't where I was going to go, but we may as well do it, isn't quite what I had in mind in terms of colour. I just put down a bit of tone before, so now I've got the wrong green, I may as well make use of it, and that's quite a nice green actually. So the frayed brush is great for very efficiently putting down grass-like texture. It's also super for not so. This kind of mark I'm making here is not so kind of fleece-like, but if you're painting a cow with kind of a shaggy coat, something like that, then perhaps a Highland cow. That's a nice little technique as well. So that shadow's looking a bit more like it in terms of the direction we want to go, and then to keep our colour scheme fairly coherent from one part of the paint into the next, I'll add some of that. I've already got some dark colours down here, but I may as well go over the top of this shadowy grass area here, because that's going to add a little extra dimension to my shadows. So adding a variety of darks within one region really helps. So just cleaning the brush again. So I haven't squeezed out. I've probably got some tube watercolour, but in fact I know I have of a yellow, but let's see. Yeah, I'll perhaps grab the tube. Just give me a second. It's right here. So this one is Naples yellow. So back in just a sec, just popping some of that onto the palette. Okay. Now I've just noticed while I've stepped away from the canvas a bit, I've got some nice cauliflowers going along here, so I can maybe make use of those a bit later on in the process. But just mixing up some of that pale yellow. And we'll lay in some highlighted blades of grass over the top of the shadows. And while I've got that on the go, I'll put some over here as well. And then as I've got that paint on the palette, I may as well just keep going with that. And I pointed out those cauliflowers, so I can kind of, I don't mind them there at all, actually. I kind of like them, but we'll just add we'll break them up a bit with some of that lighter colour, and then come back in with the darker green. And it's a good idea just to kind of play a bit when you do this sort of thing, because, again, grass is how many blades of grass would there be in a field this size, millions upon millions. And they've been trampled on and blown by the wind and originally growing at weird angles as well. So don't want to get too tied up in having just one direction of brush stroke. Scumble around a bit and just see what works. And if you don't like what you get, obviously you can always change it. But actually, I'm quite liking the effects I'm getting here, because what I've got are sort of 2 or 3 layers of randomness. So the original washes were put down very quickly, big broad strokes, and then I allowed the colours to mingle and work their way around the paper as they dried. So I've got a lot of different layering effects and cauliflowers and textures and things. And now that this additional layer of texture on top, once it dries back, I think it's starting to look a bit more field-like, so that's kind of nice. Okay, so let's pop the watercolours back down, and then I'm going to go back to the adult sheep over on the left and put some, just a little bit more in terms of structure into that animal without going into a massive detail. So the first thing I'm going to do is just fill in this region here on the nose. So a bit of the tinting white, touch of the ultramarine blue. We'll pick up just a little bit of that pale burnt umber that I used on that shadow lamb earlier, and let's fill in that bit of the nose. Now that was a bit darker than I intended, but what I'll do is I'll work my way around the animal because it's quite a nice mid shadow tone. That brush mark was not at all the shape I intended it to be, so let's see if we can just tease that into something a bit more, or a bit closer to what I wanted. There we go. So quite like this colour actually. I think it's that went on way too heavy there. That wasn't intentional. Okay, let's use a bit of a lighter touch as we work our way around the animal and block in some shadow. So this has started to solidify this animal. So it's looking a bit more modelled, a bit more 3D, and a little less like a drawing. So just cleaning the brush off. So I'm going to come back in with the pure tinting white and just add a few textured highlights across the top of the animal. And again, even here you see where I'm putting down random marks by just tapping the brush on the painting. I think it's a good idea to break that up a bit. So I've got texture, 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 but here I can do a long conventional brush stroke, if you like, to help convey the curvature of the hindquarters there. I'll break up that lump there a touch. So that's not too bad. But what I do want to add are some slightly warmer tones to the underbelly, and also, but before I do that, I'm just going to remember I said that bit was too dark. Okay, now it's too light. But there we go. That's a bit closer to what I want. So it's a little more in line with the reality of the situation. So again, just cleaning the brush off. And yes, I need to kind of create a yellow ochreish brown. So let's come back in with some of my cad yellow. We'll pick up a touch of our cadmium red, mix up a reddish orange, and then a touch of the ultramarine blue. Maybe even a touch of the burnt umber. A bit more water, and we'll see what that looks like when it goes down onto the sheet. Oh, that's not too far out from what I wanted, so that's cool. So that's worked fairly well. Let's grab, put in some deeper shadows. So we'll go cat red. Add some ultramarine, let's add a lot more ultramarine blue. So I've got a deep purple there, but I'm going to mix that in with that yellow ochreish colour that I had. Oh, I've got way too much red on my brush. Didn't realise that. That's not too bad, but I just need a bit more blue in there, I think. Let's try that. It's a little more on the red side than I'd planned, but I don't actually mind the way that's looking. That's okay. Again, we'll see what it looks like when it dries back. I'm just pondering, while I've got that on the brush, can I use that anywhere on this main animal? I think I can. I think I can put a bit more of that colour there. Shadow under the tail. Perhaps make a bit of shadow under the jawline, a bit darker there. Then I can use some of that over here as well, on this little guy. And then I kind of feel I need to elongate this leg. It seems to have got a bit shorter than it should be in the drawing. Now, if I do that, that's effectively got a problem with the shadow. So we'll have to address the shadow later, because I think I do want to. I think those legs are looking a little bit too short. I may be able to get away with that shadow. So I'm just going to wipe off this brush and leave that as it is, and I just need to find myself a smaller flat brush, which I thought I had put out ready, but apparently not. So what we'll do instead, we'll switch to this little liner brush, and that should work for what we want. So what we'll do for now is grab a bit of the tinting white, mix that in with that kind of pale off blue that I had before, but it could perhaps do with having a bit more of the white in there, possibly a lot more. And let's use that to tidy up some of this. So just put a little bit of a line in there. Top of the leg, which is actually in more shadow than I've got it, but really what I'm doing at the moment is just kind of redrawing things a bit, so I don't need to worry about the lighting too much. So that leg is going to come down to there a little more, and then the rear legs aren't as bad. The problem's not as serious, but whoops. So there, anchor the leg to the ground a bit more there, then that one, it's going to come down there. So that, in my opinion, has made things look a little more anatomically correct. And in fact, what I'm going to do is just stretch that one down there as well. So I personally feel that this little, these adjustments that I've made so far have started to bring things to life. I like the brighter colours I've got here. I really like how the colours here are now bouncing off of the colours in the foreground, on the foreground animal. The grass seems to be working well, and the modifications here have pushed these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 very much into the background, kind of out of focus, which was always the intention. So I think that's it for this session. I'll be back with another stream on this one at some point, hoping this one's getting close to resolution now that I've made those adjustments. But I think it's quite important sometimes, when you can, to just step away from a painting for a few days and come back and look at it with a fresh perspective. And I was actually able to pop down to the coast recently, and I did a few plein air studies, so I'll try and show you those on the channel fairly soon. But thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this one, and I'll be back with another stream or a video or something fairly soon. The other thing is, in the meantime, check out my community tab on the channel, because I'm posting images of paintings there, which you can check out if you would like to. Okay, thanks for watching. Bye for now.